Hello everyone and welcome to a new community video. This time we're going to be talking about the lore of Solasta, and today joining me is Antoine.
Hi Emil, hi everybody, nice to meet you there.
So Antoine, for those who don't know, is the writer or one of the writers of Solasta, and he's the one that has imagined the world of Solasta before we even started the project. So Antoine, just to give a little bit of information on those who didn't really follow so much about the game, where is the game taking place and when is it taking place?
Well, Solasta is a high fantasy world with a post-apocalyptic touch. The game is happening on the fringes of the former Manacalon High Elf Empire, 1,000 years after a cataclysm which basically destroyed the core of the empire.
Okay. Quick question. So we're talking and we're showing the game around Manacalon and the old empire which got destroyed. But the world of Solasta is actually much vaster than that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So for those who are actually following the game, what we are showing here is just a fragment of the world, of the entire world that is called Solasta. And now we're gonna actually go over a few questions that the community has asked us. So one of them is, can you give us more information about how the High Elves of Manacalon managed to survive the Cataclysm? And actually, there is this new empire that is formed with remnants of the High Elves. So how did they actually restart this society in the wake of that event?
Well, they restarted their society because they had, at the time, considered bad luck to be stuck at the fringes of the empire, more or less at the frontier and not at the core of the empire.
So you're saying that those who survived to make the new empire weren't really those living in the capital, but more those living around the outside of the actual empire, right?
Exactly, because the core of the empire was very, very, very badly shaken by the Cataclysm, and what happened led to an almost complete destruction of the core, with the land being twisted, with magic laws being changed, or magic even altogether vanishing, with complete destruction of the fabric of reality in some parts, with huge problems in such stuff as weather patterns being disturbed. Really cataclysm in every respect of the word.
So jumping on that, this Cataclysm also, we actually said during the lore trailer that there were no humans and no gods before that on Solasta. So someone asked us if the human race is only 1,000 years old, dating back to only the Cataclysm, and what information about them is common knowledge. So I think there's been a little misunderstanding, right, Antoine? The human race does not only dates back to the Cataclysm.
Well, actually, the take of the questioner is absolutely correct. There have been humans on Solasta in the last 1,000 years, but not earlier. The reason being, the humans actually come from another world. They are refugees fleeing a threat which was about to annihilate their civilization, and their gods helped them breach the fabric of space to move from their doomed world to Solasta.
Yeah, so they're kind of invaders, right?
Refugees / invaders, because their gods mistook the fact that there were no gods on Solasta for the fact that they could resettle there without opposition.
Oh, okay. So they also asked what is common knowledge about that old world. I think not a lot, right? There hasn't been a lot of information about the old world.
there was much which was lost as humans were refugees. The best place to ask would be to go to the great bibliothèque of the main temple of Einar at the Einarium, which is about 80 miles north of Caer-Kiflen, the capital of the Principality of Marsgars.
That's a very, very specific answer. So, okay. Let's go to the next question. So, I've seen someone ask, is Solasta within the same universe as like D&D, or is it a separate location? You have to remember that just like how Eberron is different from Forgotten Realms, Solasta is also different from Faerun. It's like, you know, different settings altogether. They're not linked in any way. And also, we have to remind you guys that we are using the SRD 5.1, meaning that we cannot use, we don't have like a full license. We cannot use the lore of D&D or the world of D&D. So we cannot make links to the Forgotten Realms or Eberron or anything like that. Solasta is a world on its own, and as you can see from or hear from what we said earlier, there's also multitude of worlds in Solasta, such as the old world where humans come from into Solasta. Okay, so next question. How much do gods actually interact with the mortals? And is the interaction only possible with the humans, since the gods arrived in Solasta with the humans, or are all the races now linked to gods as well?
Well, actually, the gods are quite happy to have gained some traction with the original ancestries of Solasta, namely elves, dwarves, halflings. They somehow, some gods were a nice reflection of the core personality of one race or the other. And so it came to be that the gods were adopted in many places of Solasta as something quite normal, with one exception being the New Empire, because they clung to the old ways of Manakalan. But besides that, all the other races realized that both the humans and the gods had something to bring into their times right after the Cataclysm, and this pragmatism led in turn to some deeply rooted faith, depending on which race you ask. You would have a different answer about what is for them important in a god. For example, there is a goddess of mischief which won't appear in our first game, which is Myzzrym, and it's something which the Sylvan Elves can totally relate to.
Okay, so you're saying that they actually adopted those gods, those worships. Does that mean the gods are able to do miracles and stuff like that? Like, why would they actually worship the gods if they wouldn't really interact with the actual populations?
Well, actual miracles, indirectly yes, because the one big thing with the gods is they allowed their followers to be able to draw upon mana in an indirect way at times where the power of the Arcanist didn't function after the Cataclysm. So in some ways, the only functioning magic for some time after the Cataclysm was coming through the gods, and it was very important in the first years and even centuries after the Cataclysm, because the old magic had died. Some feared forever, but actually, as we now know, the old magic came back.
Okay, so just to put it simply, after the Cataclysm, since the foundation of magic were kind of torn apart, those who worship gods were able to use magic through the power of the gods, whereas those who used to be able to cast magic were out of commission. So that's why there's so many who flocked to gods, right?
It's one of the main reasons, because the true clerics of the gods were able to show that they still had functioning magic, which gave them some real appeal, particularly in times when you need quick healing, because all outside is so dire.
Yeah. Okay, so that's actually a very interesting part of the game here about how gods took place in Solasta. The fact that, since the Malakalen was so powerful due to their mastery of magic, then after that, they couldn't really do that anymore, and other, ancestries also flocked to gods to be able to use that magic as well. So, next question. We have one person asking us that while most orc seem hostile, we talked about having half orcs during the Kickstarter. Unfortunately, we won't have them for the first game due to production reason. Like, we don't have the time to add the half orcs. But does that mean that there's a faction or group of orcs that can be reasoned with or traded with, by other civilization? Like, are they not only savages who just roam around to pillage and kill?
That is correct. There will be some non-combat interaction with some orcs, even though most of the interactions with orcs will involve combat. Not all. Some orcs are actually quite civilized in their own ways and do not necessarily resort to combat as the first, second, and last answer to any problems.
Okay, so
they are aware that trade is also something important for them.
So you're telling me that basically the orcs have different core beliefs depending on their tribe as well, right?
It is correct. It is mostly tribe-based, and orcs are also spiritual in their ways. They also have their priests, which they actually called shaman. I won't go into which deities they worship, but orcs are not simply brutes.
Okay. Last question that we'll have for today. It's coming from someone who mentioned that we only have 5 playable races in Solasta, which are the humans, the elves, the dwarves, the halflings, and the half-elves. And they were asking, are the other playable races from SRD, like the Dragonborn, the Gnome, the Tieflings, do they also exist in the world? And if so, will we have the opportunity to interact with them? So I first want, before we go into the lore, to talk about the production's restrictions. The reason why we don't have these races is mostly because we don't have the time or budget to add them. So since we can't add them as playable characters, they also won't be in the game like with NPCs you can interact with. Otherwise, we would probably be adding them as playable races. That being said, in the lore, Antoine, what have we thought about those other playable races?
Well, we thought about introducing them. We have plans and backstories to explain why they are on Solasta and why we didn't see them before. We covered our bases that way, and we will be quite happy to introduce them to you in future projects.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that they are not here for a reason, at least in our first game, like in the location and time. But they do exist, and they and hopefully we should be able to see them in a future either expansion, DLC, or even Solasta 2 or something.
That is correct.
All right. So thank you, Antoine, for joining me today. I think this is going to be all we're going to talk about this time, and hopefully we can see you guys another time about another topic in another video. See you guys.
See you guys. Bye bye.